welcome to Gilmore's Glorious Gossip, a show dedicated to Critical Role over on the Geek and Sundry Twitch channel. This week features two more amazing artists. The current art is from Meg LM, also known as @MegLM on the Twitter sphere. She has been featured here before, but this particular piece is just too good to pass up. Later, you'll be seeing a piece from Charlie Segerstedt, and I hope I said that correctly, also known as @SweetFrost, SWEETFR0ST, over on Twitter. Remember, if you'd like your art featured here, just let any of the show's hosts know via Twitter, and we'll do our best to get it to you, or get it on the show, and make sure that you have a link so that you can see how it's being used and all that. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can catch us every Monday. But before we get to introductions, I would like to thank Akios1, ACAIOS1 on YouTube, for correcting us on an error we've been making in regards to the Ranger class. In the Beastmaster path of the Ranger class, once a player gets their extra attack at level 5, they can take one attack and use the other to command their companion, as shown by Laura in episode 41. Originally, Kalia and I believed that Matt had house ruled that, and we were incorrect.
Even we are fallible.
Yes, this is a good example of DMs not knowing absolutely everything and not being able to keep track of everything. So, many thanks, Akios1. In the meantime, I'm Akiva, found on Twitter @AkivaDavid, AKIVADAPHYDD. And joining me today is my excellent friend and a very special guest. So let's introduce yourselves and tell us how you were first introduced to D&D.
I'm Cosmic Candy, Kalia, as you know, and I was first introduced into role-playing in 1997 in college by way of Vampire the Masquerade. And at the time, Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition was out. 3rd edition didn't come out for another couple years. And I opted out of D&D 2.0. It just, I don't know what it was about it. Something didn't hold my interest. But years later, joined the military, and a bunch of airmen and I, on our weekends, we would get together and we would play Dungeons & Dragons and also Star Wars. And it was at that time that I started playing D&D 3.5.
Excellent. And our very special guest, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm the voice of CritRoleStats on Twitter. And, my very first introduction to D&D was also in college. That was 4th edition for me. Unfortunately,
sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't the best experience. Unfortunately, I was also around the time that I had a bunch of other priorities going on. So after the first 6-hour session of getting our character set up, and then immediately having a TPK 2 hours into our first session, we're like, yeah, maybe we don't have the time for this. But good news is, a couple of years ago, I was trying to get into some sort of RPG because I was trying to look into improv classes, which where I'm from, there's not very many opportunities. Well, if there's nothing I have available, I might as well try improving myself. So I started looking at RPG options, which I started with the Leverage RPG. I was really into the Leverage TV show, and in terms of getting started as a game master, the rules are a lot simpler than someone who looks at D&D is like, wow, that's a lot to memorize. So GM'd a few games of that, and then eventually got invited into a 5e campaign as a continuation of a number of other campaigns that a coworker had been running, and been playing and DMing ever since.
Excellent. I got my start, back as a teenager. My dad was also in the Army. For those of you at home that know, I was in the Army later. But a few friends of mine introduced me to 2nd edition D&D. And I have to agree with Kalia, second edition. Ow.
They tried explaining Thaco to me, and I'm like, nope. That little octopus gif, that was me.
I got Thaco. It's just so much math.
Yeah.
3.5 or 3 and 3.5 really simplified things, and I played one game of 4th edition, and I was like, nope, this is an MMO on paper, and it's just not my thing. And then 5th edition came along, and I'm like, oh my god, it's 3rd edition streamlined. I love it. So that's where I am today. But thank you for joining us, Andrew.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
You, honestly, within the critter community, you are one of the larger names. But one thing that I'm curious about is, how did you get started with CritRoleStats?
Well, I think we can first trace it back to my wife, who originally started watching Critical Role when Geek and Sundry first started streaming. And, she told me about, it's like, oh, it's really cool, and, you're DMing now, you should totally check it out. The DM's really great. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, but it's really hard for me to, it's like, they're voice actors, which makes it cool, but it's kind of hard to get into somebody else's game. And so she would keep telling me every week, and when it got around to Chlorota's betrayal, that's when it's like, okay, she's really, really freaking out about this. I should check out what this is all about. So from that point, I ended up binging the whole series in a weekend, caught up, and around, managed to tune in just in time for the first Grog versus Kern fight, which is like, oh, this is like a 3-hour show. It's a perfect opportunity for me to just sit back and iron those shirts that I keep putting off. Which worked great for that episode, but I'm still kind of curious, I wonder how much health either one of them have. And that continued on in the next episode where we started with the Slayer's Take. And from that point, I got kind of curious about, okay, exactly how much health does an ancient adult white dragon have? So I pulled up my monster manual and started reading it, and tweeted from my personal Twitter account, which, this is before CritRoleStats became a thing. And, Critters community would retweet me. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. And, got a lot of positive reinforcement from everybody who's following the Critical Role tag. So next week, oh, this is cool. So I did it again. And then after that, I just realized, okay, I'm curious how many natural 20s have been rolled, how many times have they rolled natural ones. And from that point, I actually started recording, by episode, how many we actually have of those. And so in addition to live tweeting, okay, this is where the monster's at, this is what we're standing at, this is how much damage the team has taken, this is how much damage the monster's taken. And then in combination with that and the data that we put on the blog, that's where Critical Role kind of started up, just out of my curiosity. It's like, okay, where are we at?
Nice. It's rather interesting because you said you got in about, Chlorota's betrayal and all that, and that's actually where I got my start as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Critical Role Stats has been a fan about as long as I have. That's cool.
Yeah, I got in not too much later than that. I started watching past episodes, but my first live episode was the first Slayer's Take episode.
Cool.
Nice. And I just think it's a real testament to your ability to look this stuff up and live tweet it so quickly, with how big you've gotten within the community.
Well, it has helped. For one, my wife definitely helps me. It's like, okay, I missed the damage on that one. Did you catch it? Yeah, here it is. So, it is not just a single person effort. And, that goes true for the blog too. Early on, it's like, okay, I want to log all the crits, but, even then, that's 20 episodes, at least 3.5 hours each. And I was able to get a number by myself just, running through all those videos. But after a while, people are like, hey, you want any help? I'm like, yes, I would. And that's kind of how we expanded into what we've become right now, because even though I might be kind of the public face on Twitter, on Tumblr, there's actually three of us who regularly post. There's me. I run the Twitter account, and I do most of the site editing and stuff like that. And then we have the Singing Badger, who is the other major poster on our site. She's been really good about getting kind of picking up any slack that I leave behind, but also getting all the how many times does X happen type stuff organized. She's been really helpful in terms of doing the research on that and collaborating on a lot of those projects. And then my wife is the third person who doesn't do a lot of talking with the community, but she does a lot of background support stuff, and her help is invaluable since we have so many tables that can get so easily out of order, and she's just there quietly. It's like, okay, if we're organizing this, we don't need this, and all sorts of stuff like that.
Excellent.
That's awesome. I tried taking some stats for a one-shot that I was in, just to see how many crits and crit fails and successes we had, and then how many how do you want to do this moments we got for a charity one shot, and it was a lot of work.
Yeah, we do try to catch as many as we can during the live broadcast. Obviously it's a lot harder to get the timestamps, like, okay, we know that happened around this time, and we can go back to the Twitch VODs and record then, but generally what we try to do is we wait for the YouTube video to become available, because once that's available, it's significantly easier to, one, scroll through it. YouTube actually gives you the option to run videos at double time, which is invaluable when you know what you're already looking for. So you're just trying to scrub through areas like, okay, I know what does or doesn't happen in this spot. Or in my case, recently I started downloading the videos and running them at 4 time, because it's that much easier to get through the videos that much faster. So yeah, we do try to catch as many as we can during the live broadcast. And some of the more common question stats, like, okay, how many times does a natural 20 happen? Those are rare enough that's easy to log. Or damage, that's the one that everybody wants to know, so we'll log that during the live broadcast. But we keep track of on every week at least 25 different classifications of stats that we update on the site every week, and we can only get 3 or 4 of those during the broadcast, so we have to go back once the video hits YouTube and quickly scan through as many of those as we can, and split up the work. And before we had Singing Badger on the team, I'd watch a video about 4 or 5 times before it's like, okay, we're good, like maybe all the way through 3 times, but then go back and scan through like bits and bits 3 or 4 more times just to catch everything that we need to grab.
Nice. Well, you said you had 25 core stats. Could you expand on what some of those are? I mean, I don't expect you to go through the entire list.
Right. Yeah, it's quite a list. Well, there's the obvious ones. There's any natural 20 or natural 1 that happens. There's how do you want to do this, which fortunately we usually only get at most 1 of those a week. Total number of kills, so we keep track of how many kills each character has and how many that adds up for the entire group. Anytime PC is knocked out. And then we also include, for fun ones, we have how many times has Matt been forced to face palm, usually because of something Sam said, but it could be anybody. How many times has Sam sung on stream? Because, we have the Scanlan songs, and then we have how many times has Sam sung along with the background music, because, he does that. Or how many times has Grog raged, Percy misfired, how many arrows has Vex let loose? You
guys actually track how many arrows?
We have. Somebody requested us, that's a legitimate question. We'll get right on that, and we caught up, and that's one that we're updating on a regular basis.
Wow, that's a lot to keep track of.
We don't even really do that for Luke.
I mean, as a player that uses a short bow, with a drawn, obviously we have to keep track of our arrows, but I never thought that anybody else would be interested in something like that because, just go and restock or pick them up
Right.
off the battlefield. But
Yeah,
wow.
and that's the thing. When you have a fandom as big as the Critter base, somebody's going to ask, and it's like, well, that's not too hard to track. In our case, it actually wasn't because we had already been logging. Okay, here are all the damage rolls, and it's been nice when people ask questions like, "Oh, this is actually something that we already accidentally have logged. We just don't have it set aside conveniently, so we'll spend the however much time it takes to find that in our documentation, and we'll set that aside." So that's a nice little bonus. Oh yeah, here we can give you that.
Wow. Well, with as often as you've gone through each of the episodes and how often, you really have to, do you have a favorite episode?
It's really hard to nail down one episode in particular. I do have moment to moment that I do enjoy just rewatching, like no stats, just this is fun. Like for example, Rambo Scanlan. The Triceratops
Scanbo.
Scanbo, yeah, whichever you want to call it. It's like Triceratops wrecking the Goliath mansion. It's like that's one that's just so much fun because the dice told as much fun as it was for Sam to just go completely nuts. The dice told the story, and that's what made it amazing. Matt could not roll that night. Sam fortunately made a lot of good and lucky decisions, and
Absolutely.
it's just quality entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And, one thing that's great about the cast is no matter which way that would have gone, that really would have been riveting regardless.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, the dice are sometimes my favorite character because
Yes.
Right.
they can lead to crazy things like critical fish damage.
Oh, yep. But you mentioned that the scan bow. Is that also your favorite moment, or are those separate?
Oh, it's hard to say. That's one that comes to mind that I've like. Oh, I have to go rewatch that again. There's just a lot of good moments. Anytime that I get to see Matt, as we find out after the fact that he completely improv something, just as a DM, I enjoy watching. Oh, look at what he was able to come up with without any planning. So even watching episode 12, where we know that he made up the entire one shot, or Critical Troll, which is like, oh my gosh, how did you manage that? Or watching Victor in action. Oh, that was completely unplanned. So anything where Matt does step by the seat of his pants is just a very educational opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, now for the harder questions. Who is your favorite Vox Machina character?
Well, officially, CritRoleStats doesn't have any favorites because stats aren't favorites. Unofficially, all three of us love Keyleth. Um, uh, the awkward princess who's always trying to do the right thing, often misses, but has so much power, so much potential, and and I actually got to meet Marisha, and she's just as sweet as I thought she would be. But yeah, we all love Keyleth.
Excellent. And your favorite NPC?
For me, I have to go with Vanessa, the Hunt Master or Hunt Mistress.
Okay.
But yeah,
Interesting choice.
well, for me, I just love her. I don't know, go sarcasm. Like even just her dry wit. She knows how to handle Vox Machina, who thinks they're tough shit, but it's like, okay, well, you're in Vasselheim now, and even after they've been inducted, she's just a great force of nature. I just love her character.
That is true. She, Vox Machina tries to get up to their hijinks, and then Vanessa just puts them down. I like that. It's a good choice. But back to CritRoleStats. What is your most often asked question? And keeping in mind that this is going to be going up on YouTube, hopefully you can just point them back to this so that you don't have to continuously answer the same question.
Oh, we often do anyway.
Yeah.
No, in our case, the ones that we seem to answer the most are, hey, can you do a list of puns? Which we actually do keep a regular update. That is one of the ones that we keep up on the site on a regular basis.
Nice.
Which case, like, oh, here you go. And, if they ask privately, we can let them know privately. But if they ask anonymously, it's like, okay, after a certain while, we can say, well, we already said, here, check out the pun page. I think at critrolestats.com/puns if you want to check it out. Other ones that we've gotten a lot of, anything that can be found on a character sheet, which that one we actually received a lot more before we were able to get the character sheets up. And a lot of those were like, okay, just hold on, give us another week and we'll be able to answer all of your questions. And, that took up a very large part of our inbox. So once we were able to publish we were able to answer at least 20 or 25 questions regarding stuff that were on their character sheets, like proficiencies and alignments and other stuff like that.
Yeah, that's got to take a lot of work because Geek and Sundry and Critical Role Cast haven't put their character sheets out there, so you've got to go through and watch each role, see what they're adding, what the circumstances are, all of that.
Yeah, put in there any special equipment, because, I remember asking on Twitter the other day, or actually it's been a while ago now, but I noticed that Percy had, it was a stat, I don't remember which one it was, higher than 20. And so I was asking, what equipment does Percy have that's allowing him to go beyond that 20 limit?
If I recall off the top of my head, that would be the manual of quicker action, quickness of action, that's it, which they picked up at Gilmore's Glorious Good in episode 14.
Okay.
So there you go.
And the fact that you pulled that off the top of your head is
impressive, to say the least.
Wow.
I do surprise myself what I actually remember, because, like, honestly, in real life, if it's anything of real importance, I'm guaranteed to forget it. And yet there's so much Critical Role knowledge, like, oh yeah, this happened in episode this. And what has also surprised me recently is somebody, we're talking like, okay, this happened, we can't remember which time, but we know which episode. It's like, okay, give me a few minutes, I'll figure it out. And I can usually click, like I can open up the video and I can click and get within 30 seconds of it. I don't know if it's dumb luck or what, but it's been an interesting turn of luck. It's like, oh, I found it.
We'll need to start getting stats on that, Andrew.
Well, I know I've been pretty much dominating the conversation as far as asking the questions. Kalia, I know you've got a few.
I do have a few. What is the trickiest stat you've had to keep track of?
By far, and this will probably surprise everybody, keeping track of how many times Matt said proper. I mean, it seems like, oh yeah, it's easy because he says it so often. That's actually why it's really hard. It is extremely difficult. And Jen can actually testify to this since she runs the transcription project. It is really hard to keep track of individual words as they're spoken. Because, when a nat 20 happens, everybody screams it's a party, and, you only have to pay half attention to the video. But if you're, only paying half attention and, he just throws in a random proper, that can go right by. And even after the first time that we published our proper list, we had a couple volunteers like, oh wait, I was rewatching this episode. Here's 3 more. So yeah, just any project. Like, how many times has Matt said blank has been proven surprisingly difficult.
Okay.
We do try to be as thorough as we possibly can, but even with several of us on the project, we are bound to miss 1 or 2 of those.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
especially since it's spoken language, it's so easy to you're understanding what they're saying, so you tune out the rest of the rest of the specific words.
Right. Granted,
Okay.
it has been fun talking to all my volunteers who've been working on those, because every now and then, at this point we stopped tracking proper because he doesn't say it as often as he used to. He still obviously says it, and every time he does, I can guarantee every single one of us twitch. And I talk to, all of them tweet at me. It's like, we're not logging that, right? Because I totally went to log it.
You said at the top of the episode that you do actually play and DM with a group. So what games are you currently involved in right now?
I am. Today, actually, I finished DMing another session of a game that I homebrew with a bunch of friends. Both. I'm actually involved in 3 games. All of them are 5e. So there's the one that I DM, and that's, like I said, I've homebrewed that world. There's another one that I got invited in by a coworker that I still play in, where I play a halfling rogue. And there's another play-by-post campaign that unfortunately we haven't had a chance to play in a while. But I played a human bard in that one, and hopefully we'll be able to pick that one up again. My DM actually talked to me and asked if I'd be willing to help him DM that, since I've had a little bit more experience on that. So I might end up DMing 2 and playing in 1 at this point.
That's awesome. Can you give us a little bit of a synopsis about the homebrew that you're running?
Sure. So in the world that I've created, it's called the world is called Coal. In the middle of it is kind of a literalization of Yggdrasil, the world tree. But in this case, it is an actual giant tree that the world kind of lives on. Thousands of miles high. Most of the world lives at the base. Most of the upper class lives up in the branches in major cities throughout the branches that are all, large enough to make all these cities seem very, very small. And in my case, the campaign actually started in a pocket in the tree that is completely shielded from sunlight that I call the Dark District, because 1, it's shielded by sunlight, but 2, it's also been artificially infused with phasers from the Underdark, which in this case allows it to be an area completely protected from scrying. So it's a good hideaway for people who are not wanting to be found, which was great for my party, who all have something to hide from. So they're all starting to get a little antsy, and they're looking to run away, and they found their way out in today's session, but unfortunately they also attracted the attention of an invisible stalker who had lost the trail of one of the party members when he went into the Dark District. So they had to fight him off, and they're like, well, maybe we should go back and hide again. But in the meanwhile, there's also a turf war between the group of doppelgangers who runs that part of the city, the Thieves Guild that is trying to take over that portion of the city, and a group of shadow monks who kind of function as a League of Shadows that are trying to root out corruption in the way that they've been trained how.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, there's a lot of
Critter,
political unrest. So
there are
looking
so
forward to
many
see.
there are so many Critters games out there that just absolutely astonish me with what DMs and players and stuff, like the stories that they have told me, they're just phenomenal. I love that.
Indeed, and actually, one quick interjection: do you guys broadcast anywhere, or is it
No,
completely
this one
offline?
this one is just a home game. Uh, yeah, I unfortunately I haven't had much opportunity to play online. I did try the Leverage RPG I told you guys about before. Did try my first chance with that. I had a little difficulty getting the right feel online, so I don't do a lot of DMing online. Um, not that I have anything against it, because I have done a couple one shots as a player, and obviously I had a lot of fun because critters are awesome. Uh, but yeah, no, unfortunately, this is all in at home game that I run, which
I
is
can
great
I
for
can
teaching
identify.
you. Yeah,
My
Yeah.
primary playing experience and DMing experience was in person previous to, um, becoming a critter and finding the community and finding people that wanted to play. I hadn't played or DM'd for several years at that point, and so I was itching to get back into it. And
sure.
when I first started DMing online, it was a complete culture shock for me, I guess is the only way to put it. It just didn't feel the same as playing in person. And there's new challenges too, not being able to see your players, see their eyes, so like you can hold the floor, I guess, with your players so that they know
Right.
when they have the table, and so I mean, so it's really different. Final question from me, Andrew. What is your favorite class and race?
Well, my favorite class by far is Rogue. A big fan of sneak attack. Love having a high deck stat. Um, just love the class in general. I've my halfling that I mentioned before is an assassin, but I also have created a thief, uh, which as an NPC, it's great being a DM because oh yeah, I'm going to try this class. Well, guess what? I'm going to throw an NPC that gets to experiment with this. So besides, I get to homebrew a lot more classes than my players get to. So my last one was my last rogue NPC was actually a Kenku, which I had a lot of
Oh,
fun with the
nice.
players. Yeah, my players enjoyed him a lot. Haven't seen him. Not really sure where he ran off to, but hopefully we'll see him again. But my favorite player class to play is actually human because uh, everybody's like, oh, I'm a human in real life. I want to play something else, and I think for that reason, I just love playing the for lack of a better term, the base race. They're fairly level, and in terms of playing a rogue or a bard, which is another one who they're the expertise classes. So really great for dice role play.
True, very true.
Right, and your humans are super versatile too. I mean, you get, especially if you
Right.
go variant human, I mean, you can get those other abilities of
Oh yeah.
your choice. And back in the 3.x days, humans got to start off with a feat, as well as they didn't have any negatives to any of their stats. So you go human fighter, and you were golden. You had probably a better ranger than if you had just played a ranger.
Hmm.
So, with all of the stats that you keep track, and as many times as you've watched each and every episode, you've gotten to know Vox Machina probably better than the vast majority of us. So, I have to wonder: do you have any theories on where Vox Machina is and where they're going as far as character development and possible quest hooks and such that they'll be going for?
The last time I tried to come up with a theory, a bunch of dragons attacked. Uh, um,
Yeah, the timing on that was just insane.
I mean, it was well done for the story's sake, since Vax was feeling a little aimless, and there are a lot of little things that they wanted to do, but they're lacking a very big thing to pursue. But no, theories wise, I know it's kind of hard to say what I think any individual character is going to do, because there's a lot of how they choose to play off of each other. Like looking at ships, which I don't really want to comment on.
Oh God, so many ships.
uh, I will say that I am looking very forward to finding out more about Osisa and her mate. When we first met her, I
Yes.
was very interested about, okay, what more can we find out about her? Because I'm really interested in her history as well as the history of her mate, and what they're able to do. And I am happy to see that we actually will get to see a little bit more of that, and that we did get to see more of her in turn.
Absolutely.
So the burning question on my mind as far as theories go, and Akiva knows what I'm going to ask. Do you see Vax as becoming a paladin in addition to his rogue?
It's hard to say, because I mean, the good thing about paladins now is you don't necessarily have to be lawful. And I don't see Vax as particularly lawful, because even with the clasp, he was chaotic in his disregard of them.
Right.
So I guess from that sense, I guess he could be a paladin of sorts. I don't see him being the I'm already forgetting what they're all called. I know Vengeance, Nature, or Path of the Ancients. What's the
Path
the
of
core one?
Vengeance. Hold on. I've got my book
You've got-
right here.
Yeah, I left
Yeah,
my
you've
book
got-
in the other room. It's like, I can't reach it. But
the
yeah,
other
There
one.
we go. So you've got the Oath of Devotion, Oath
That's it.
of the Ancients, and Oath of Vengeance.
okay. Yeah, Oath of Devotion normally implies that the paladin is going to pursue a lawful good path, which, without a doubt, Vex is absolutely good. Whether or not he actually pursues a lawful direction, that one, I don't think so. So Path of Devotion is probably out. But I also don't see him as particularly vengeful, so it's kind of hard to say, even though that one is the most. He doesn't have to be evil, good, or neutral. He just has to be in pursuit of vengeance. But it's hard to say what he's. Well, okay, there is Thordak, so I guess you could go that route. So,
Right. That's
don't
what I
know.
was just about to throw out there. Is now they've got a name for the dragon that killed their mother. And they've got a face for it too. So that would be an easy way to go. Oath of Vengeance. And looking at some of the abilities that Oath of Vengeance gets, they, especially at level 7, which is way down the road, but it helps Vax basically pursue his enemies, keep them from escaping and such.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't see. I mean, I do believe that Vax is definitely getting more religious. That's pretty much a given. I don't see him going so far as to go paladin, though.
Yeah, I have to go with Akiva on that one.
It's
Yeah.
going to be a sad day when this dream of mine dies, but I still sneak attack smite, man.
So, okay, well, thank you again for joining us, Andrew. This was
Absolutely.
highly enlightening and very entertaining. Usually we wrap up each episode by going into our DM's corner, and as a fellow DM, you are more than welcome to weigh in with any knowledge you may have.
Okay.
So this week, we are going to be talking about crafting scrolls. This was actually brought up in the Desert Winds game that Kalia DMs and that I'm a player in. Quirk, our wizard, was asking about creating like druidic scrolls and that sort of thing. And then it got a little more specific into what actually goes into crafting a scroll. So, when you craft a scroll, as it's described in the books, you're essentially casting the spell into the scroll for it to be targeted and triggered at a later time.
Mm-hmm.
Which, and that as far as I'm aware, and I guarantee you the audience will correct me if I'm wrong on this, that's really as far as it goes in the book. The individual mechanics of it is left up to the DM. And I'm not talking like dice rolls and that sort of thing, because that is explained in the book. But for the mechanics of it, when you're putting the spell into the scroll, you have to expend the spell slot. You have to use whatever material components or somatic components or whatever are required for the spell. And the book throws in a gold expenditure as well, and that's to cover the specialized ink, the specialized
parchment
and all that, because it's not just any parchment that you're creating this scroll with.
You also need high quality material components.
Yes.
Because things like that.
If you were to use just regular off the street, paper parchment, it's going to burn when you cast that spell.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it is a process that is slightly involved. Because, I mean, it does also take the amount of time. And not all DMs keep track of, downtime passing and all that. But most DMs that I know do. So you have to keep in mind how long it takes to transcribe that spell as you are slowly casting it into the scroll.
Let me go and ask your question with another question. In my campaign, we're still fairly low level. I think they're just now reaching 4th level. At what level would you allow someone to start creating scrolls or potions or magical items?
They can do it as early as level 1 or level 2,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean they're going to be doing. The only thing that they would be able to do at that point would be low level spells, level 1 spells and cantrips. So I guess level 2, because they can, in the way that I like to run it, they can. And I didn't enforce this on Thursday. I was too caught up in what was being said and trying to adjudicate it to really use my system at the same time. But typically what I've done is you can create magical items at the level below you, because you are still achieving mastery over your current level of spells and such. So once you level up to the next level, then you can create that next level of spells and magical items. That's the way I like to see it in my head.
Sure.
Others out there are going to disagree with me. That's fine,
Well, I don't think there's any right or wrong way. There are just ways that make more sense for each campaign. And, in mine, like, my players didn't ask, like, okay, how do I make this scroll? They jumped right ahead. Hey, so Tiberius has these earrings that allow you to talk to everybody, so how do I get some of those at level 3? It's like, whoa. So,
right.
Working with those, like, well, technically you don't have access to this, high-level communication spell yet.
Right.
Survive the journey to find the caster that can make them for you.
Right. And that's kind of what I told them. It's like, okay, at this level, if you want to spend your free time, I'll allow you just spending time to get them prepared to receive the enchantment, since you don't actually have the spell yet. But since you're just cooling your kills anyway, here's something you can spend your time, and that'll make the DC a little bit lower when you actually start trying to enchant them.
Indeed.
That's the direction
seeing...
I took. I'm sure there's better ways. In fact, I'm open to suggestions from other DMs, but it's really difficult to figure out what's the best way to create magical items other than, oh, here's a magical item that somebody already created.
Right, and I mean, actually, DMG actually has sections on creating a magic item.
Sure.
They've got modifying an item, creating a new item, and I've actually spoiled my party a little bit in Desert Winds, I think. When we did our David Bowie and Alan Rickman tributes, I created new magical items for them. One was what I'm now calling the Hammer of Vengeance. I need to update that in Leonis's sheet, so that we're not copyright infringement. But it had a well-known phrase attached to it that was used by a tiefling cleric that was in this temple that they were in. And I gave it the ability to, if an ally falls in combat, you are able to use your reaction to say the phrase activation, which all comes from a well-known and loved movie called Galaxy Quest. You can say that phrase, and then you can move up to half your movement. Even if you've already expended all your movement for a round, you can move up to half your movement and take an immediate attack against the enemy that dropped your ally. And it did D8. It did standard Warhammer damage plus D8 radiant. And that was a magic item that I created just off the top of my head for that particular adventure. I also created a wand for them based off of Snape's wand in the Harry Potter movies, which they sold this past week.
Which I was not, talked to about beforehand. They just sold it. My character was away, and internally I was screaming, "No!" the entire time. But that's okay.
I'm gonna find a way to get on the chat and stop right now.
I as a DM am okay with this decision, but that's because I'm evil. So.
And that's kind of tricky because as a DM you can you create something and you're allowed to slap your own hand. It's like, okay, I gave you this. I'm sorry. I need to go and bring this back. But it's the difficulty is trying to figure out when players like, okay, I really like an item that has these statistics. What can I do to make sure that I have that? Other than there is asking the DM to provide it somewhere in the adventure, and then there's I'd like to spend the time actually creating this. And part of the problem is, okay, it takes a lot of time to create something like this, like the magic carpet. It's like, having someone else doing it, it's going to take over a year. You're not going to just get one. You have to go find one, and unfortunately, there aren't many. So it's trying to find that balance where you want to reward your players, but you also want to enable them to do stuff with their free time.
Yeah, and that's actually one thing that really surprised me about Kalia's last game. When I went looking for a ring of water breathing and a ring of water walking. And I expected maybe one of each. No, she gave the entire party one of each. And I don't think she realizes how that's going to come back to bite her in the end.
No. I do. I realize that, but there's a story reason for it.
Yeah, but at the same time, that is one thing that we as DMs need to be careful on is whether it's a player creating the item or a
plot item,
or a shopkeeper that has these items. One of the responsibilities of a DM is to make sure that there aren't too many of them in the world. Now, I'm pretty certain that for that particular shop, for at least the next year, she's not going to have any more, but...
Nope.
But by the same token, I am extremely grateful that we got them.
Sure.
So...
Well, yeah, like I said, there's a story reason for it, which will be revealed next episode. But there was already something in the works that if you had not gone looking for those items come the proper time, there would have been items there for you to do what you need to do.
Okay. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. Just a reminder, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment. By liking and subscribing, you'll be able to catch us each week, and send us any of your D&D questions using the hashtag DMS Corner on Twitter. If you want to submit art, again, contact us via Twitter. You can catch me at Akiva Daphydd, AKIVADAPHYDD, or you can catch Cosmic Candy at COSMIC as
CANDI,
as she's fond of doing. But we hope you enjoyed this episode, and until next week, kick back, relax, and enjoy your games.